The velvet rope of the corporate Christmas party felt less like a boundary and more like a tripwire. I stood by the bar, watching my wife, Clara, across the crowded ballroom. She was laughing too loud and standing too close to Reese, her real-man coworker, a mountain of engineered muscle and manufactured confidence. He was the reason the silence between Clara and me at home had become a physical thing, heavy and cold. The reason she constantly found fault with my quiet competence, my strategic patience. He's a man of action, David. You just think. Reese approached me from the side, a glass of cheap bourbon in his fist, his eyes already glazed with cheap triumph. He didn't say hello. He blocked my escape route with his massive shoulder. "Look at you," he slurred, forcing a patronizing smile. "Standing in the shadows. Typical." I felt the familiar cold pressure behind my sternum. Not fear, anticipation. Clara deserves better, David. She deserves someone who can actually protect her. His voice was loud enough to turn a few heads. I saw Clara flinch, then look away. Her silent complicity was the final, critical piece of evidence. He didn't wait for a response. He hauled back his arm and shoved me. Hard. I stumbled back 2 steps, my drink splashing against the bar. The surrounding chatter died instantly. A circle of silence opened around us. I righted myself. My movement was minimal. My face showed nothing. You mistake composure for weakness, I thought. A common failing of the impulsive. This emotional betrayal hadn't started tonight. It began 6 months ago with the accidental late-night texts and the sudden need for extra training at the gym. I knew. I had simply chosen to wait for the public, undeniable evidence. The physical assault in front of witnesses was a perfect golden opportunity. I had been prepared long before I walked in here. Reese was predictable muscle. I was a man who worked in variables, physics, and controlled outcomes. My secret wasn't that I trained, it was what I trained for. Years in tactical security consulting taught me that brute force loses to leverage and momentum. My eyes tracked his movement. He was squaring up, seeing my stillness as submission. A perfect target. He swung. A wide, predictable haymaker aimed at my head. I didn't dodge. I merely stepped into the punch, not against it, allowing his momentum to carry him past the axis. My left hand moved, not a punch, but a guide, catching his wrist and pulling him fractionally off balance. My right foot was already planted. My right hip rotated. I used his own forward thrust, the very arrogance of his body weight, against him. It wasn't a brawl, it was geometry. The move was called a seonage, a shoulder throw. Clean, efficient, and irreversible. Reese's momentum carried his 250 pounds up, over my shoulder, and down. The sound his body made hitting the polished concrete floor was not the dull thud of a fall. It was the sharp crack of structural failure. The silence returned, deeper, shattered by the gasping shock of the onlookers. I didn't stand over him. I stepped away immediately, my breathing unchanged. Reese lay there, not moving, his face a mask of shocked pain, his cheap bourbon pooling nearby. I looked at Clara. Her face was white. Her colleagues were frozen. The women staring at Reese's crumpled form, the men staring at my controlled immobility. They had seen protection in his cheap aggression. They were now learning what real control looked like. I spoke, my voice low and utterly cold, addressing no one in particular, but meant only for Clara. He initiated physical contact, in front of witnesses. Then I focused on a security guard who is now running toward us, panic on his face. "Call an ambulance. He needs a paramedic. I believe his femur is fractured." The final part of my plan was already in motion. I had secured the witnesses, articulated the sequence of events, and diagnosed the injury with frightening accuracy. The police report would be clean, self-defense, open and shut. I walked over to Clara. Her eyes, wide and terrified, finally met mine. She didn't see her quiet husband. She saw the absolute, dangerous competence beneath the surface. The man who could protect her, not with bluster, but with surgical violence. "I won't make it awkward for you," I said, repeating the word he had used months ago to describe my quiet presence. "I'll be gone by morning." I didn't wait for her denial or apology. I took my coat, I left the ballroom, the sound of the approaching sirens already filtering through the doors. Rice would spend New Year's in traction, learning the cost of his ego, a lesson in geometry and consequence. Clara would spend it alone, realizing that the man who protected her was the one who just walked out forever. I walked into the December night. No remorse, no triumph. Just the quiet, brutal satisfaction of a game played and won. The storm inside me had passed. I had regained control, and the silence now felt like freedom. The greatest betrayal had given me the greatest